The Diary of Maribel Heathertoe. This is the diary of Maribel Heathertoe, written in the quiet days after she came to Bree and began making a life of her own among its lanes, inns, gardens, and watchful doors. Maribel did not come to Bree as a hero. She came as someone looking for a place to belong. In time, she made one, a smaller, warmer inn than the famous Prancing Pony, a place of hearth-smoke, simple meals, careful listening, and steady kindness. But Bree is never only what it appears to be. Roads meet there. Strangers pass through. Old fears travel under new names. And sometimes, trouble comes first as a rumour, a footprint, or a sheep found torn beside the East Road. At the heart of these pages is Maribel's friendship with Jorin Farrow, known to many simply as Jack. Jorin is a messenger and road watcher of Bree, quiet-footed, sharp-eyed, and more capable than he lets most folk know. He is the sort of man who notices what others miss, and who acts before anyone has thought to ask for help. To Maribel, though, Jorin is more than a useful ally. He is a trusted friend, a familiar presence at the edge of her days, and the keeper of a courage he would rather hide than boast of. She knows the secret stories whispered about him. She knows why some call him Willowjack. And more than that, she knows the man beneath the name, loyal, modest, stubborn, and brave, in the old Bree way. These diary entries follow Maribel from her first days in Bree to the evening she and Jorin walked together to the Prancing Pony, carrying news that could no longer be kept quiet. What began as the ordinary record of a woman building a home becomes something larger, a witness to friendship, fear, duty, and the first stirring of an adventure neither of them fully understood. This is not a tale told by kings or captains. It is a tale written by lamplight, in a careful hand, by someone who saw the small signs before the great events arrived. These are Maribel's pages. 12 Blow, year of the hay reaping, age 11. We moved to Bree today. Mama says Aunt Rowan needs help running the Westgate Inn, and Papa says Bree has more work than Staddle. He says there are always wagons to mend, doors to hang, barrels to lift, and horses to shoe in a town where 4 roads meet. Mama says that means we are fortunate. I am trying to believe her. I miss the brook behind our old house. I miss the willow roots where I used to sit with my feet in the water. I miss knowing every stone in the lane and which hens belonged to which neighbour and how the fields looked when the sun was low over Staddle Hill. Bree is louder. There are more boots on the road, more voices at the doors, more carts, more dogs, more strangers. Men from Bree, hobbits from Staddle, travellers from who knows where. Some look friendly, some look tired. Some look like they are carrying secrets in their coat pockets. The Westgate Inn is smaller than the Prancing Pony, but Aunt Rowan says that is its virtue. She says not everyone wants noise and songs and big talk after a long road. Some folk want stew, a clean cup, a dry bed, and nobody asking too many questions. I think I like that. The inn smells of beef stew, sweet pipeweed, old wood, and rain in the thatch. There is always a fire burning, even when the room is empty. Aunt Rowan says a cold hearth makes a house feel abandoned, and she will not have any abandoned feelings in her inn. My room is under the eaves. The ceiling slopes so low on one side that I bumped my head twice before supper. Mama laughed and said I would learn to duck like a proper Bree girl soon enough. After supper, while Aunt Rowan was counting coins and Papa was carrying a broken chair out to the yard, a boy came to the inn with a message. He was about my age, I think, maybe a little older. Quiet one. Dark hair, thin face. He had mud on his boots and a satchel across his shoulder, but he did not look messy. He looked as if the mud and the satchel and the road all belonged to him somehow. He gave Aunt Rowan a folded note and waited while she read it. He did not fidget. He did not stare around the room like most children would. He stood near the door with one hand on the strap of his satchel, listening. That is the word for it. Listening, not just to Aunt Rowan, not just to the fire or the rain outside. He listened, as if the whole inn was speaking softly, and he meant to hear every bit of it. I asked his name. He looked at me then. His eyes were grey, I think, though the room was dim and I am not certain. He said, Jorin Farrow. Then he looked away, as if saying his name had been more than enough conversation for one evening. I told him mine was Maribel Heathertoe, but I do not know if he heard me, because Aunt Rowan gave him a halfpenny and told him to thank his mother. He nodded, tucked the coin away, and was gone before I could ask where he lived. I watched him through the front window. He did not run down the road like most boys would. He walked, careful, quiet. Head a little turned, as if he were listening for something behind him, or ahead of him, or under the stones themselves. I do not know yet whether Bree will feel like home, but I think there are things here worth noticing. 2 Afterlife, Year of the Farthest Rain, age 13. Jorin Farrow brought messages twice today. The first came before breakfast, when the mist was still caught along the street and the stones outside the Westgate Inn were dark with last night's rain. He had a note for Aunt Rowan from Mr. Appledore, about 2 casks of cider that were meant to arrive by noon and did not. The second came near supper, from the Southgate watch, though Aunt Rowan would not say what it was about. Jorin never comes straight in. I have noticed this now. Most folk push open the door, stamp their boots, and call for whoever they need. Some do not even wait to see whether the room is busy before shouting across it. Not Jorin. He stops outside first. Sometimes I see his shadow pass the window before he enters. Once, twice, like a cat deciding whether a room is safe. He looks toward the road, then toward the alley, then through the glass if the shutters are open. Only after that does he step inside. I asked him once if he had forgotten how doors work. He blinked at me, and I thought for a moment he might actually try to answer. Today, when he finally came in, I already had a cup of tea waiting on the counter. Not the strong black tea Aunt Rowan drinks when she is cross. The lighter kind, with a spoon of honey, because Jorin never eats the biscuits unless pressed. But he will drink something warm if it is put in front of him. He looked at the cup, as if it had appeared by magic. Then he looked at me, then back at the cup. "You look cold," I said. He was, though he would never have admitted it. His sleeves were damp at the cuffs, and a strand of dark hair was stuck to his forehead. There was mud on one side of his boot, the red-brown kind from the lower road near the ditches, not the grey mud from the market lane. I do not think he knew I noticed that. He took the tea with both hands. For a while he said nothing. He only stood there near the counter holding the cup close while Aunt Rowan read the message and muttered about men who write in a hurry and expect women to read their minds afterward. The common room was quiet then. Only the fire snapping, rain tapping at the windows, and old Mr. Tunnelly snoring in the corner with his pipe gone out. Jorin looked almost peaceful. Almost. But even while he drank, his eyes kept moving. Door, window, hearth, stairs. Door again. As if kindness might be safe, but only for a moment. I do not know why he always looks startled when someone is gentle with him. It makes something in my chest ache. When Aunt Rowan gave him her reply, he tucked it carefully into his satchel. He nodded to her, then to me. "Thank you," he said. Softest thing, barely above a whisper. But he meant it. I could tell. Some boys say thank you like they are tossing a stone into a ditch. Jorin says it like he is handing you something fragile and hoping you will not laugh. After he left, I watched him through the rain-streaked window. He circled the street with his eyes before crossing it, still listening, still watching, still acting as if the world might change shape the moment he stopped paying attention. I wonder who taught him to be that way. And I wonder who might teach him not to be. 20 Wedmouth, Year of the Sharp Winds, age 16. Jorin came to the inn tonight bleeding. He tried to hide it, the fool, as if I would not notice. As if a person can stand in the doorway with one arm held stiffly behind his cloak, leaving red drops on Aunt Rowan's clean floorboards, and expect no one to ask questions. It was late when he came. The wind had been worrying at the shutters all evening, making the sign outside creak like an old man's knees. Most of the supper crowd had gone home, and only 2 travellers remained in the common room, bent over their bowls and speaking low. Jorin slipped in quiet as ever. Too quiet, that was the first thing I noticed. Usually, even when he tries not to be heard, there is some small sound to him. The scrape of a boot, the brush of his satchel, the soft breath he takes before speaking. Tonight there was almost nothing, and that made me look up. His face was pale, not frightened. Jorin is almost never frightened in the way other people are, but tight, drawn in around the eyes. His mouth was set like he had decided something hurt less if he refused to admit it. He said he had a message for Aunt Rowan. I said, "You're bleeding." He looked down as if surprised to find his own body had betrayed him. "It's nothing," he said, which meant, of course, that it was not nothing. I came around the counter and took him by the good arm before he could step back out into the night. He stiffened, but he did not pull away. "Sit," I said. He glanced toward the door. "Jorin Farrow," I said, in the voice Mama uses when one of the boys from the stable tracks mud across a clean floor. "Sit down before you fall down." That worked. He sat. Aunt Rowan came out from the kitchen, saw the blood, and said 3 words I will not write here. Then she sent me for the wash basin, clean cloth, and the little brown jar Mama keeps for cuts. I thought my hands would shake. They did not. Mama's lessons came rushing back as if she were standing behind me. Clean water first. Do not scrub, press. Look before you wrap. If there is dirt, draw it out. If it bleeds too much, hold firm and do not panic. It was a cut along his forearm, not deep enough to kill him, thank goodness, but ugly enough to make me angry. The sleeve was torn and there was a dark bruise already rising near his wrist. "What happened?" I asked. "Branch," he said. I looked at him. He looked at the fire. "Branches don't usually cut upward," I said. He said nothing. That was answer enough. There are boys in Bree who think quiet means weak. There are men who think it too. They forget that quiet things can still have teeth. I washed the blood away as gently as I could. He did not wince once. Not when the water touched it, not when I pressed the cloth. Not when Aunt Rowan poured a little spirits over the cut and I nearly winced for him. He only watched me. That was the strangest part. Not the blood, not the torn sleeve, not even the lie about the branch. It was the way he watched me. Like he expected me to stop. Like he expected kindness to be a thing that could vanish if he breathed wrong. I wanted to tell him I was not going anywhere. I did not know how. So I crushed willow bark the way Mama taught me and made him drink it in hot water. He made a face at the taste which pleased me more than it should have, because it meant he was still himself under all that silence. When I wrapped the bandage, my hand brushed his. Only for a moment. His fingers were cold. He froze. Not fear. I know what fear looks like on him now. It is in the eyes first, quick and hidden. This was not that. This was something else. Surprise, perhaps. Or longing, or the terrible shock of being touched carefully when you had braced yourself for pain. I felt it too, though I do not know what to call it. The room seemed to grow quieter around us. Even the wind at the shutters faded for a breath. Then Jorin looked away. Aunt Rowan cleared her throat from the kitchen door, though I am not sure how long she had been standing there. I finished tying the bandage. "There," I said, "try not to bleed on the road home." He almost smiled. Almost. Then he stood too quickly, thanked Aunt Rowan, thanked me even softer, and took his message back into the night before I could say anything sensible. I watched him go through the window. He held his wounded arm close to his chest now, not hidden, just guarded. The wind caught his cloak and pulled it sideways as he crossed the lane. I wished he had stayed. Not because of the wound, because for a moment, sitting by the fire with his sleeve rolled up and his guard almost lowered, he looked less like a shadow passing through Bree and more like a boy who might belong somewhere. I wish he knew he could belong here. To Hallowmath, year of the old road fog, age 16. Folk are whispering about a mysterious ranger saving a caravan outside Archette. Not a real ranger, they say. Not one of the tall, grim men from the north with old swords and older eyes. This one was slighter, quicker. A shadow in the fog with an archer's bow in hand and mud up to his knees. A tall figure, bow drawn, stepping from the willows. That is what Mr. Fernie's cousin claimed in the common room tonight, though he had not been there himself, of course. Nobody who tells the loudest version of a tale ever seems to have been standing where the arrows flew. Still, the story has grown legs. 3 wagons out of comb, delayed on the road by fog thick enough to make horses shy. A child crying. Wolves too near the wheels. Then a shape among the willow branches and 2 arrows loosed before anyone could shout. By the 3rd telling, he had slain 6 wolves. By the 5th, 12. By supper, someone claimed he had worn a green cloak stitched with silver leaves and vanished into the mist like an elf lord from an old song. Bree folk are ridiculous. They have started calling him Willowjack. I nearly dropped a pitcher when I heard it. Willowjack. As if a name like that could hide who he is from anyone with eyes. I saw the mud on Jorin Farrow's boots this morning. Not the grey mud from the market lane, nor the soft black muck near the stable drain. It was the yellow-brown clay from the Archette Road, the kind that clings and dries in ridges. I saw the torn place on his sleeve too. He thought he had turned that arm away from me when he came to the side door before dawn. He gave Aunt Rowan a message from the North Watch and said nothing about wolves, fog, caravans, or frightened children. He never does. He only stood there, pale and tired, pretending not to sway while Aunt Rowan squinted at the note and grumbled that young men who brought news before sunrise ought to bring bread with them too. I was kneading dough at the kitchen table. Mama used to say bread knows when your mind is elsewhere because it turns stubborn under your hands. She was right. The loaf came out lopsided. Mama does not help in the kitchen as much now. Papa has taken steady work mending doors and cartwheels on the east side of town, and Mama spends more time keeping our own rooms, sewing and tending Aunt Rowan's herb patch when the weather allows. Aunt Rowan says I have hands enough for the Westgate now, and better eyes than most. I think she means it as praise. I also think she means to make use of it. She has started leaving the ledgers open where I can see them. At first, she only asked me to add columns. Then she had me mark which rooms were let and which needed clean straw. Yesterday, she told Mr. Underhill that if he wanted to settle his account, he should speak to me. Me. As if I were not still the girl who used to bump her head on the eaves. Perhaps that is how it happens. Not with a grand announcement, but with one key left on the counter, one account trusted to your hand, one guest looking to you before anyone else. And then suddenly the inn has begun to know you. Jorin came again after midday. He did not stay. He never stays when people are talking about Willowjack. He slipped in through the back, took the parcel Aunt Rowan had wrapped for Mrs. Barrows, and avoided looking toward the common room where the story was being improved upon by men who had never fired a bow at anything smaller than a hay bale. I followed him to the yard. "Willowjack," I said. He stopped, only for a moment. His shoulders did not rise, his head did not turn. But I knew he had heard me. "I don't know what folk are talking about," he said. "That must be very peaceful for you." He looked back then, and there it was, the smallest warning in his eyes. Not anger, pleading. "Do not say it, do not name it, do not make me reel in front of the world." So I did not. I only stepped closer and brushed a bit of dried mud from the hem of his cloak. "You might at least learn to clean your boots before becoming a legend," I said. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then he was gone through the yard gate, quick and quiet, as if the very wind had business with him. I know exactly who Willowjack is. I do not know whether to laugh or strangle him. Possibly both. 15 Hallymouth. Left a sprig of willow in the hollow stone today. Couldn't help it. There are wolves too near the downs, and that merchant from the South Road spoke of strange howls beyond the last hedges. He tried to make light of it in the common room, but his hands shook when he lifted his cup. Men will laugh about danger after they have escaped it. I am learning that. They say things like, "No harm done," and "a close thing, that," while their eyes keep returning to the door. Aunt Rowan noticed too. She notices more than she admits. She was polishing cups behind the counter, slow and steady, but I saw the way her mouth tightened when the merchant said the howls did not sound like ordinary wolves. After he went upstairs, she told me to bolt the back door before dusk. She never used to ask. The Westgate feels different now than it did when I was 11. Or perhaps I am different. The fire is the same. The tables are the same. The smell of stew, pipeweed, rainwool and old wood is the same. But I hear more than I used to. A horse arriving too fast. A voice lowered before bad news. a boot step that pauses outside instead of coming in. Aunt Rowan says an innkeeper must hear trouble before trouble reaches the hearth. I told her I am not the innkeeper. She looked at me for a long moment, then handed me the ring of spare room keys and said, "No, of course not." I hate when grown women say true things by pretending not to. The hollow stone sits near the west gate where the lane bends toward the old elm. It is not much to look at. Just a weather-split stone with a dark pocket in one side, half hidden by grass and road dust. Children leave beetle shells in it sometimes. Once I found a bent nail and a blue button. Jorin showed it to me years ago. Not on purpose, I think. He had tucked a message there for one of the gate watchers, and I happened to see. He looked so stricken that I promised not to tell anyone. I have kept that promise, mostly. Today I used it. I went just before sunset, when the sky was turning the colour of old pewter and the wind smelled of rain. I carried the willow sprig in my apron pocket like a thief. It was a foolish thing to do. It was also the only thing I could do. If Jorin sees it, he'll understand. He will know I am telling him the road feels wrong. He will know I heard the merchant. He will know I am worried. He always understands more than he says. That is part of the trouble. I tucked the sprig into the hollow and stood there longer than I should have, listening to the gate creak and the low murmur of men changing watch. For one wild moment I wished he would appear at once, stepping from the dusk with that quiet way of his, and tell me I was being foolish. He did not. Of course he did not. Jorin Farrow is never where one wishes him to be, only where he thinks he is needed. I came back before Aunt Rowan could miss me. She had already missed me. She looked at my empty hands, then at the mud on the hem of my skirt. "Westgate?" she asked. I said nothing. She sighed. "Your mother would say you are too young to carry other people's fears." "What would you say?" Aunt Rowan put another log on the fire. "I would say fears come in whether we invite them or not. Best learn where to set them down." "I do not know where to set this one. If Jorin sees the willow, he'll understand. If he does not, I will not sleep tonight anyway." 16 Hallowmath. The sprig was gone this morning. I checked before breakfast. I told myself I would not. I told myself I had rooms to turn, bread to slice, candles to trim, and no good reason to walk all the way to the west gate before the sun had properly climbed over the roofs. Then I went anyway. The hollow stone was empty. No willow, no note, no sign. Only a little damp mark where the stem had rested against the stone. I stood there like a fool, staring into a hole in a rock, while Mr. Cinderby drove his cart past and asked whether I had lost a penny. I said yes. That was easier than the truth. A penny is a sensible thing to look for in the road. A boy who runs toward wolves is not. When I came back, Aunt Rowan had already poured tea for me and set it on the counter. She did not ask. That was kind of her. Or cruel, I am not certain which. All day I listened for him. Every time the door opened, I looked up. Every time boots crossed the threshold, my heart did that ridiculous little leap before becoming sensible again. Travellers came and went. 2 hobbits from Staddle argued over the price of oats. A drover from Combe spilled ale on the good bench. Mrs. Applethorne came to borrow rosemary and stayed long enough to tell Aunt Rowan 3 different versions of the same gossip. No Jorin, no message. No Willowjack tale either, which somehow made it worse. By evening, Aunt Rowan let me close the ledger by myself. She stood behind me while I counted the coins twice, then nodded as if I had passed some test she had not told me I was taking. "You've a steadier hand than I had at your age," she said. I laughed because I thought she was teasing. She was not. Her fingers were curled around her mug, and I noticed the swelling in the knuckles. I noticed how slowly she lowered herself into the chair by the hearth once the room had emptied. "Your hands hurt again," I said. "They are old hands." "They are not that old." "They are old enough to have earned complaint." I wanted to tell her that I was not ready. Not for the ledgers, not for the keys, not for the way people had begun saying my name when they needed something settled. Not for the hollow stone, or Willowjack, or the fear that comes when a person you care for, walks into the dark because someone must. Instead, I fetched the willow bark tin and made her tea. She watched me for a while. "You have your mother's gentleness," she said. Then, after a pause, and none of her caution. I almost told her that caution had never saved anyone from worrying. But I held my tongue. "The sprig is gone. That means he saw it. That means he knows. It should comfort me. It does not. Now there is nothing to do but wait and listen. I am beginning to think that is half of keeping an inn." 23 Winterfilth. Jorin returned today with mud caked to his knees and his eyes darker than usual. A merchant's caravan was attacked on the greenway. 3 wagons, 2 families, and a pair of hired guards who were more useful afterward than during from the sound of it. The tale reached us before Jorin did, which is how I knew it had been bad. Bad news travels differently. Good gossip wanders in laughing. Bad news comes through the door without knocking. By noon, half the common room knew something had happened south of Bree. By supper, they were all pretending not to be frightened. Men spoke too loudly. Women asked too many careful questions. Someone said the road has always had dangers. Someone else said things are worse now. Old Mr. Tunnelly muttered that when wolves grow bold, worse things follow. Aunt Rowan told him not to sour the stew. She said it sharply, but I saw her hand go to the old iron poker beneath the counter. Jorin came near dusk. He entered by the yard door, which meant he did not want to be seen. He should have known better than to think I would miss him. There was mud up past his knees, burrs caught in the edge of his cloak, and a red mark along his jaw where something had struck him. He carried himself carefully, which meant more hurt hidden under the coat. He happened to be nearby. That is what he told Aunt Rowan. I nearly laughed in his face. Aunt Rowan did not laugh. She only gave him a look over the top of her spectacles and said, "Of course you did." He looked at the floor. I waited until he had delivered his message and taken the parcel for the watch. Then I followed him out behind the inn, where the rain barrel sits beneath the eaves and the back wall keeps the wind off. The yard smelled of wet straw and smoke. "You can't keep facing all this alone," I said. He did not pretend not to understand. That frightened me more than if he had lied. For a moment he only stood with his back to me, looking toward the low line of roofs and the road beyond them. The road always pulls at him. Even when he is standing still, some part of him is already walking away. "Someone has to," he said. Those words. Quiet, plain, terrible. As if that settled everything. As if the world had asked a question, and Jorin Farrow, fool that he is, had answered with his own body. "No," I said. "Someone has to help. That is not the same thing as you having to bleed in every ditch between here and Archette." He turned then. His face was tired enough that my anger lost its footing. "I know the paths," he said. "I know where they cross. I know where folk get careless. I know where the fog settles." "And that makes you impossible to kill, does it?" His eyes flicked away. That was when I knew. He does not think he is impossible to kill. He only thinks it does not matter as much if it is him. The thought made me so angry I could hardly breathe. I stepped closer and touched his wrist, just once, not to stop him, not even to hold him, only to make him feel that he was not made of road dust and duty alone. He went still as a stone. Then he stepped back. Not far, not rudely, but enough. The touch frightened him more than knives ever could. "Maribel," he said. He almost never says my name unless something in him has slipped. "What?" I asked, though my voice came out softer than I meant. He looked at my hand, then at my face. "I don't know how to be what you think I am." I did not know what to say to that, because the truth is, I do not know either. I know how to pour tea. I know how to bind a cut. I know how to read ledgers now, how to settle quarrels over rooms, how to tell when a guest needs food more than ale. Aunt Rowan says I have the makings of a keeper, and Mamma says she is proud, though she touches my hair when she says it as if I am still a child. But I do not know how to love someone who belongs half to the wild. I do not even know if that is the word. Love. It sits on the page like a candle too near dry straw. Jorin left before I could answer him. Of course he did. Why does caring for someone feel like pulling threads from my own heart? 3-4 Yule. 3 days without seeing him. 3 nights imagining every terrible thing. I told myself he was busy. I told myself the roads were thick with messages before Yule. I told myself the watch had sent him north or south or wherever quiet men go when they are trying to outrun worry. None of it helped. By the second night, I was angry. By the third, I was afraid. Aunt Rowan saw me checking the door every time the wind moved it. "You'll wear a groove in the floor with your eyes," she said. "I am not watching for anyone." No, of course not. She has become unbearable. Also, she is right too often. The inn has been busy with winter coming on. Travellers want warmer beds and fuller bowls when the nights sharpen. The pantry shelves needed counting. 2 mattresses had to be restuffed. The chimney in the small room smoked again, and Papa came to fix it after supper, smelling of sawdust and cold air. He does not work at the inn much anymore, except when something needs mending beyond my skill. He kisses Mama on the cheek when he comes in, calls Aunt Rowan Captain to make her scowl, and tells me I stand behind the counter like I was born there. I told him no one is born behind a counter. He said some folk are born to make others feel safe. I had to turn away then and pretend to check the stew. Mama noticed. Mothers are dangerous that way. This morning I rose before the kitchen fire was built. I meant only to walk to the west gate and back. I needed air. That is what I told myself. The world was pale with frost, and the roofs of Bree looked silver in the first light. Even the road seemed quieter, as if the cold had laid a hand over its mouth. I found him beneath the old elm near the west gate. Asleep, Jorin Farrow, Willow Jack, terror of wolves and rescuer of caravans, curled like a half-starved boy under his own cloak with his satchel for a pillow. He looked so tired I almost cried right there in the street. There was a scrape on his cheek and dried mud at the hem of his coat. His bow lay within reach of his hand. Even sleeping, he had set himself where he could see the road, if he woke. That undid me. He cannot even rest without keeping watch. I stood over him for a long time, longer than I should have. He looked younger asleep. Not peaceful, exactly. Jorin is never entirely peaceful, but some of the hard watching had gone out of his face. His lashes were dark against his skin, and one hand was tucked close beneath his chin like a child's. I did not wake him. I could not bear to see him put the walls back up. So I took the bread and honey I had wrapped in a cloth and set it by his side. Then I added the wool scarf Aunt Rowan had pretended not to see me take from the peg. He will know it was me. He always knows. I walked away before he stirred. Back at the inn, Aunt Rowan was lighting the kitchen fire. She looked at my empty hands. "Found what you were looking for?" "Yes," I said. "And?" "He was sleeping." She nodded slowly. "Good. Then let him." So I did. All day I worked. I swept the common room, checked the rooms, settled the account for a tinker who tried to pay half in buttons, and told 2 boys they could either stop throwing crusts or eat outside with the crows. Aunt Rowan laughed until she coughed. Then she had to sit down. I did not like the sound of that cough. I made her tea and she let me, which I liked even less. If Jorin knew how much I worry, he would walk even farther into the wild. So I will not tell him. I will only leave bread where he can find it, and honey. And perhaps, when he is foolish enough to sleep under trees in 4 Yule, a scarf. 10 after Yule, year of the first quiet keeping, age 17. Another willowjack tale in the common room tonight. This one had him standing on the roof of a moving wagon, firing arrows through fog, while wolves circled beneath like spirits from a grave. By the end of it, according to Mr. Cinderby, Willowjack had leapt from the wagon, struck one wolf with his bow, frightened another merely by looking at it, and disappeared before the grateful merchant could give him a purse of silver. I was carrying a tray when he said that. I nearly spilled ale down his neck. Jorin was in the corner. Of course he was. He had come in quietly during the second telling and taken the smallest table near the back wall. He wore his hood low, but not low enough for me. I know the line of his shoulders. I know the way he keeps one hand near the table edge, ready to rise. I know the stillness he falls into when people are speaking about him without knowing it. He looked miserable. Not proud, not amused, miserable. That made me angrier than the tale itself. Aunt Rowan saw my face and took the tray from my hands. "No broken cups tonight," she said. I wasn't going to break cups. "You were considering it." Only one, possibly two. I waited until the room grew louder, then crossed to Jorin's table and said, "Back hallway. Now." His eyes widened. Good. Let him be startled for once. He followed me past the pantry shelves and the stacked ale casks, into the narrow hall where the wall lantern smokes unless the wick is trimmed just so. It smelled of tallow and apples stored for winter. "You're letting these stories grow wild," I said. He leaned back against the wall and looked tired already. "I am not letting anything." "You could deny them." "Would they believe me?" "You could stop appearing out of fog with arrows." That almost got a smile. Almost. "People see what they want," he whispered. There was something in the way he said it, not only about Willowjack, about everything, about Bree folk seeing a hero because they need one, about boys seeing a target because he is quiet, about travellers seeing a messenger and nothing more. About me. I said something foolish then, very foolish. "And what do I see, Jorin?" The question seemed to strike him harder than anger would have. He looked at me like it hurt. Not because he did not know the answer, because perhaps he did. The hall was so narrow that we were standing closer than we would have in the common room. I could hear the muffled voices beyond the door, the scrape of chairs, Aunt Rowan telling someone that no, he could not have another cup until he paid for the last two. Jorin's hand moved, slowly, as if he were giving me time to step away. I did not. He took my hand. Not a long hold, barely a moment. His fingers were cold from the road, rough where the bowstring had marked them. He held my hand like it was something he had no right to touch and could not make himself release. Then he did release it. Too soon, of course too soon. "I don't know what you see," he said. His voice was rougher than usual. "Yes, you do." He looked away. That was answer enough. Before I could say more, Aunt Rowan called my name from the common room, though I am certain she did not need me. She has ears like a fox when she wants them. Jorin slipped out the back before the next Willowjack tale could begin. I stood in the hallway for a moment with my hand still warm where his had been. When I came back, Aunt Rowan gave me one look and said nothing. Later, after the last guest had gone upstairs, she handed me the ledger. "You close it tonight," she said. "I closed it last night." "And you'll close it tomorrow too." I looked at her. She was rubbing her wrist again, the bad one, the one that aches when the weather turns damp. "This inn will need a keeper with steady hands," she said. "It has one." "It has had one," Aunt Rowan said. "Now it may need another." I did not answer. I could not. My heart was still somewhere in the back hallway, held for one brief moment in Jorin Farrow's cold hand. Not a long hold. Barely a moment. But enough that it has not settled since. 18 Solmouth, year of the first quiet keeping, age 17. A bad message arrived late. Those are the worst ones. Not the messages that come in haste with a horse lathered and the rider breathless. Those frighten everyone at once and fear has somewhere to go. People run, doors open, someone calls for water, someone else calls for the watch. The truly bad messages arrive quietly, folded small, carried by someone who wishes his hands were empty. A man did not reach his mother in time. His name was Edric Vale, from a holding south of the Greenway. His mother had taken ill near Archet while travelling to stay with kin. A message was sent, then delayed, then handed from one person to another in the wrong order, as messages sometimes are when weather, mud, and careless men all have their say. Jorin carried the last piece of it. Too late. He came to the west gate after moonrise. The common room was nearly empty. Aunt Rowan had gone upstairs early with her cough, though she swore she was only resting her eyes. Mama had spent the day with her and told me very gently that Aunt Rowan must not carry trays anymore, not full ones, not upstairs, as if I did not know. As if I had not been watching the inn settle itself onto my shoulders one small weight at a time. Keys, ledgers, guests, firewood, rooms, accounts, judgment, worry. I am beginning to understand that an inn is not a building. It is 100 promises made every day. Warmth, food, fair measure, clean sheets, a listening ear, a door that opens when the road has been cruel. Tonight that door opened for Jorin. He looked hollow. That is the only word. Not wounded, though he may have been. Not frightened, not even tired in the usual way. He looked as though something inside him had stepped backward and left his body standing there by habit. He did not ask for tea, so I made it. He did not sit, so I touched his sleeve and guided him to the bench beside the kitchen hearth. He let me. That alone told me how bad it was. For a while, neither of us spoke. The candle on the table burned low and steady. The kitchen smelled of banked coals, dried rosemary, and the last heel of bread from supper. Outside, the wind moved along the eaves with a soft, searching sound. "I should have gone faster," he said. His voice was almost gone. "You cannot outrun every road." "I could have tried." "You did." He shook his head. The guilt sat on him like a wet cloak. "I have seen men carry guilt before. Guests bring it in with them sometimes. They wrap both hands around a cup and stare at nothing. They speak of weather when they mean death. They ask for another drink when what they want is forgiveness from someone who is not there to give it." Jorin carried guilt differently, like a wound he believed he deserved. I moved the candle closer, not because we needed light, because the dark seemed too near him. "Jorin," I said. He looked at me then, and I saw that he was very young and very old all at once. "I heard her son crying," he whispered, "when they told him." There was nothing useful to say. So I stopped trying to find useful words. I reached out and touched his cheek. His skin was cold. For one breath, he went still. I thought he would step away. I thought I had asked too much of him without asking at all. Then he leaned into my hand. Only a little. Only enough that I might have missed it if my whole heart had not been waiting there. But I did not miss it. That was the moment I knew. Whatever this is between us, whatever he refuses to name, whatever I am still afraid to write too plainly. It is real. And it frightens him. And it frightens me. He closed his eyes. I held my hand there, gentle as I knew how, and let the silence be kinder than speech. After a while he said, "I don't know how to stop carrying them." "The messages? The people?" I swallowed hard. "Then come here when they grow too heavy." His eyes opened. "You can't ask that." I just did. He looked at me for a long time. Then, very carefully, he placed his hand over mine. Not to pull it away, to hold it there. The candle burned between us until the wax spilled over the side and hardened on the table. Aunt Rowan came down later and found us sitting by the hearth, not speaking. If she was surprised, she did not show it. She only took in Jorin's bowed head, my hand in his, and the untouched tea gone cold. Then she said, "Maribel, in the morning, we'll speak to the Reeve about the papers." I stared at her. "What papers?" "The inn," she said. Jorin lifted his head. Aunt Rowan's face was pale in the candlelight, but her voice was steady. "I have kept the west gate long enough. Folk already come to you for rooms, accounts, comfort, and sense. Might as well make honest what everyone knows." I could not breathe properly. "Aunt Rowan." "No arguing tonight," she said. "I am old, not dead. I'll still tell you when the stew is thin." That made Jorin make the smallest sound, not quite a laugh, but near enough to one that I nearly cried. Aunt Rowan went back upstairs. I sat there with the whole inn changing hands around me. The walls did not move, the hearth did not brighten, the keys did not leap from their hook. Yet everything was different. Jorin's hand was still over mine. "I always thought this place was yours," he said softly. I looked at him. "Did you?" He nodded. "Since when?" He looked toward the kitchen door, the counter beyond it, the dark common room waiting for morning. "Since you gave me tea before I knew how to ask for it." I had to look away then. The bad message remained bad. The road remained cruel. The dead did not come back because a candle had been lit in the Westgate kitchen. But Jorin stayed until dawn. And when the first pale light came through the shutters, he was still there beside the hearth. So was I. 4 Astron, year of the first quiet keeping, age 17. Today, Aunt Rowan signed the first papers. Not all of them. She made that very clear. I am not dead yet, she said to Mr. Halwick the Reeve before he had even taken off his gloves. Poor man nearly dropped his ink pot. The papers say that I am to serve as named keeper of the Westgate Inn under Aunt Rowan's authority, with the accounts and daily running placed in my hands. That is how Mr. Halwick said it. Aunt Rowan said it shorter. She runs the place. I complain. Papa laughed so loudly that Mr. Halwick blinked at him. Mama cried. Quietly, of course, into her handkerchief standing beside the hearth where she thought no one would notice. I noticed. I always notice Mama crying, even when she pretends she is only troubled by smoke. The common room was empty for the signing, though not for long. No room in an inn stays empty unless it is sick or closed, and the Westgate is neither. The morning fire was burning low, and the tables smelled of beeswax because I had polished them before dawn. I do not know why I did that. Mr. Halwick did not care whether the tables shone, but I cared. It felt wrong to sign my name while crumbs lay on the floor. Aunt Rowan sat in the chair nearest the hearth, the good chair with the carved arms. Her hands were wrapped in a shawl, though the room was warm. When she lifted the quill, I saw how stiff her fingers were. I wanted to take it from her. I did not. Some things must be done by the person letting go. Some things must be witnessed. She signed first. Rowan Bramblebank, in her sharp, slanted hand. Then Mr. Halwick turned the page toward me. I stared at it so long, Papa finally said, "Maribel, lass, the ink won't bite." I wrote my name, Maribel Heathertoe. It looked too small for the thing it meant. Afterward, Aunt Rowan took the ring of keys from her belt. I thought she would give me one. Instead, she gave me all of them. The front door, the back, the pantry, the cellar, the strongbox, the rooms upstairs, the little drawer under the counter where she keeps letters, old coins, and things she says are none of my business. The keys were heavier than I expected. "They are only iron," I said, because my voice was doing something foolish. "No," Aunt Rowan said. "They are promises." That was worse. Mama cried again. Papa looked out the window and pretended to study the weather. I held the keys in both hands and tried not to feel 11 years old, newly come to Bree, bumping my head on the eaves and missing the brook behind our old house. Aunt Rowan looked at me for a long time. "This inn chose you before I did," she said. "That is nonsense." "Yes," she said. "Most true things are, at first." Jorin came by near dusk with a message from the West Gate. He stopped when he saw the keys at my belt. I had almost forgotten they were there. Almost. His eyes went to them, then to me. "They suit you," he said. That was all, just 3 words. But Jorin says little things as if they cost him something. I touched the keys without meaning to. They feel too heavy. He looked toward the common room, where old Mr. Tunnelly was asleep by the fire and 2 travellers were eating stew in peace. "Good things usually do," he said. Then he left before I could ask whether he meant the keys or the inn or me. I think he meant all 3. Tonight, after everyone had gone to bed, I walked the rooms alone. I checked every latch, banked every coal, turned down every lamp. At the last, I stood behind the counter and listened. The Westgate breathed around me, wood settling, fire whispering, wind along the shutters, a guest snoring softly upstairs. Aunt Rowan says an innkeeper must learn the difference between quiet and peace. Tonight, I think we had peace. For a little while. 29 Wedmath, year of ash and apples, age 18. Mama and Papa moved into the little house beyond the East Lane today. Not far. That is what everyone keeps saying. Not far at all. Only across Bree, past the Cooper's yard, past the low wall with the yellow lichen, past Mrs. Applethorne's garden and the turning toward Staddle. Not far. But tonight their room above the kitchen is empty. That is far enough. Papa has steady work now with Mr. Cinderby, mending carts, doors, shutters, wheels, and all the things Bree folk break and then insist were already half broken before they touched them. Mama says the little house has better light for sowing and a patch of soil where she can grow sage without Aunt Rowan telling her it is planted wrong. Aunt Rowan says she never said the sage was planted wrong. Mama says Aunt Rowan moved it 3 times. Aunt Rowan says that proves it was wrong. I will miss hearing them argue. They did not leave because of sorrow. I must write that plainly, or later I may remember it wrong. They left because life changes its rooms. Papa's work is no longer here. Mama wants a quieter hearth. Aunt Rowan needs rest more often. And I belong to the Westgate now. That is the truth of it. Not because papers say so. Not because keys hang at my belt. Because when a traveller comes in wet and hungry, he looks to me. Because when the ale runs low, Denny asks me which cask to tap. Because when Mrs. Fernhill complains about the corner room being draughty, Aunt Rowan does not rise. She looks at me and waits. Because last night a man asked whether the innkeeper was about, and before I could fetch Aunt Rowan, he said, "Mistress Maribel, I mean." I almost looked behind me. Mama folded her old blue shawl and left it on my bed. "I thought you might want it," she said. "It is yours. It was mine. Now it remembers you better." I did not know what to say to that. Papa carried the last box down himself, though his back has been troubling him. At the door he set it down and looked around the common room as if measuring every beam. "You stand well here," he said. "I am only standing." "No," he said, "you are keeping." That word has changed. When I was little, keeping meant holding something tight. Now I think it means holding something open. A door, a hearth, a place, a person perhaps, if they let you. Jorin came just before supper. He must have heard, though I do not know from whom. Bree has no secrets, only news that has not reached the loudest mouths yet. He brought no message. That was strange enough that I noticed at once. He stood near the back door with a wrapped bundle in his hands. "For the east room," he said. Inside was a new latch plate, shaped plain but well made, with smooth edges and clean screw holes. The old one has been loose for months. I had complained of it only once. Once? To myself, I thought. "You made this?" He shrugged and fixed it. That is not the same as answering. It will hold better. Jorin Farrow, master of avoiding all simple questions. I took the latch plate and held it in my palm. It was warm from his hand. "Thank you," I said. He looked toward the empty room above the kitchen. "They really left?" "To the east lane, not far." He nodded. Everyone nods when they do not know what to do with my face. "Does it feel different?" he asked. "Yes." He waited and I swallowed. "It feels like the inn got larger." Jorin looked around the kitchen, the pantry shelves, the narrow stairs, the familiar walls. Then he said, very softly, "I'll still know where to find you." That nearly undid me. I wanted to say, "And I will still worry when I cannot find you." I did not. Instead, I said, "The east room latch needs fitting before nightfall." He almost smiled. Almost. Then he took off his cloak, rolled up his sleeves, and set to work. Aunt Rowan watched from the hearth and said nothing, which means she saw everything. 12 Winterfilth, year of the open ledger, age 19. Aunt Rowan did not come downstairs until noon today. She said she overslept. She lies badly when she is tired. I had already opened the inn by then. Denny had swept the front step. I had set bread to warm, and old Mr. Tunnelly was in his usual chair, complaining that the fire was too low, while sitting as close to it as human bones allow. The Westgate does not wait for anyone's joints to improve. Travellers came in from the north before breakfast, soaked through and cross with the road. One wanted 2 rooms for the price of 1 because his brother was small and quiet. I said his brother could be small and quiet in the same bed or pay for his own. Denny coughed into his sleeve to hide a laugh. The man paid. Later, Mr. Cinderby came in, full of bluster and ale fumes, though it was barely midday, and declared that a man of his standing ought to have credit until the next market. I said a man of his standing should have enough balance to walk home before his wife came looking for him. He left, with dignity. Some of it. Aunt Rowan came down just in time to see me send a drover out to wash before I would serve him stew. She leaned on the stair rail, grey braid over one shoulder, watching as if she had paid for a show. "What?" I asked. "There," she said. "There, what?" That was the voice. What voice? The one an innkeeper needs when kindness is not enough. I pretended not to understand because understanding made my throat tighten. The ledger is mine now. Not officially, perhaps. Aunt Rowan still owns more of the Westgate than I do, and if the roof falls in, the roof will fall on her purse first. But the open ledger sits beneath my hand every night. I know who owes for 2 suppers and who has never failed to pay. I know which travellers need to be placed near the hearth and which are better near the door. I know when to ask questions and I know when not to. That last is harder, especially with Jorin. He came in after dusk, wet to the bone, with a message tucked under his coat to keep it dry. He handed it to me, not Aunt Rowan. I did not think much of it until I saw Aunt Rowan looking at us. "What?" I asked again. She lifted her cup. "Nothing, Mistress Maribel." I told her not to call me that. She called me it twice more before supper. The message was for the watch, a warning from the North Road. Missing goats near a farmstead, tracks in the mud, nothing certain, nothing anyone wished to say aloud. Jorin waited while I read it. "You brought this to me," I said. "Yes." "Why?" His eyes moved toward Aunt Rowan, then back. "Because folk will listen faster if it comes from you." I nearly laughed, then I saw he meant it. That frightened me a little, not because I do not want to be trusted, because trust is another kind of key, and it is heavier than iron. I sent Denny to fetch one of the watchmen and made Jorin sit by the kitchen fire while he waited. He argued. Of course he argued. I put soup in front of him. He stopped arguing. For a while he ate in silence, shoulders bowed, hair dripping onto his collar. He looked older than 19 should look, older than anyone should look while eating soup by a kitchen fire. "You cannot carry every warning yourself," I said. He glanced up. "I know." "You do not." His mouth twitched. "Maybe I am learning." "From whom?" He looked at me then, not away. Not at the fire, at me. "From the keeper of the Westgate." Aunt Rowan made a sound from the hearth that might have been a cough. It was not a cough. I felt my face go hot and pretended to check the bread. Later, when the watchman came, he did not ask for Aunt Rowan. He asked me what I had heard. I told him. He listened. And when he left, I stood behind the counter for a long moment, hands flat on the wood, feeling the ins settle around me again. Not larger this time, deeper, as if its roots had gone down into the hill and somehow mine had as well. 24 Yule, year of the open ledger, age 20. Jorin knows which stair creaks now. That is dangerous. A person should not know the private sounds of an inn unless he lives there, works there, or has been cared for in it too often to pretend otherwise. He knows the 3rd stair complains in damp weather. He knows the pantry door sticks unless lifted first. He knows where I keep the honey, the willow bark, the clean bandages, and the good tea Aunt Rowan says is wasted on men who cannot tell good tea from boiled leaves. He knows not to ask whether I waited up. I always do. He always knows. Tonight he came after the last guest had gone upstairs. No blood. Thank goodness. Only cold hands, tired eyes, and the road clinging to him like a second cloak. He knocked at the back door, even though I have told him he may come in when the kitchen lamp is lit. "You will wake the whole inn one day," I said. "No one wakes to my knocking." "I do. You wake to everything." That is almost true now. A loose shutter, a horse in the yard, Denny dropping a pot, Aunt Rowan coughing upstairs, Jorin's step by the back door. Especially that. He sat at the kitchen table without being told. That is new. Once he would stand near the door with one hand on his satchel as if every chair in the world might trap him. Now, sometimes, he sits. Not always. Never if others are watching. But here, late with the fire low and the lamps turned down, he lets the room hold him. I gave him bread, cheese, and the last of the apple butter. He looked at the apple butter. That was for breakfast, he said. It is for people who need it. I don't need apple butter. No one needs apple butter, that is why it matters. He did not answer that. He only ate it. Aunt Rowan says I win more arguments by feeding people than by speaking. She may be right, she is often right, which is one of her worst habits. She came down later in her shawl and found him repairing the loose hinge on the flower cupboard while I counted the day's coins. Neither of us had asked him to fix it. He simply noticed the sag in the door, took a tool from his satchel, and set his hands to it. Aunt Rowan watched him tighten the hinge. Then she looked at me, then back at him. You planning to repair the whole inn, one cupboard at a time, Jorin Farrow? He froze. I nearly laughed. He said, Only the loose bits. Aunt Rowan hummed. There are many loose bits in an old inn. I noticed. I expect you did. That was not about cupboards. I know it. He knows it. Aunt Rowan certainly knows it. She went back upstairs looking far too pleased with herself. When the hinge was fixed, Jorin closed the cupboard door softly. Perfectly. No scrape. No sag. I should have thanked him. Instead, I said, You could stay in the east room tonight. He went still. Not as he used to. Not like a trapped thing. More like someone standing at the edge of a bridge he has imagined crossing but never dared step onto. It's empty, I said too quickly, and the road is iced, and you look half dead. I have slept worse places. That is not an argument. That is evidence against you. He looked at the door. Always the door. Then at me. I shouldn't. Why? He had no answer, or too many. Bree watches. People talk. Willowjack belongs to the road. Maribel belongs to the inn. Good sense says distance. Fear says more. I heard them all in his silence. So I did not press. I folded a blanket and set it on the bench by the hearth. Then sleep there until the fire dies, I said. He looked at the blanket, then at me. Maribel, do not argue with the innkeeper. That did it. He lay down on the bench, boots still on, one arm folded beneath his head. I sat at the table and finished the ledger while pretending not to watch him fall asleep. He looks younger when he sleeps. I have written that before. It is still true, but tonight, he also looked less alone. That may be the most dangerous thing of all. Before dawn he was gone, of course. But the blanket had been folded neatly on the bench, and beside it he had left a small piece of willow. Not a warning. Not this time. A thank you. I pressed it flat, between these pages. 27 Solmouth, Year of the Black Tracks, age 22. There are strangers at the Prancing Pony asking after danger. Butterbur says it is nothing. Butterbur says many things are nothing until they are standing on his own boots. He came by this afternoon himself, red-faced from the cold and carrying a message he forgot to hand me for nearly 10 minutes because he was too busy explaining that he was not worried. I'm only saying, he said. It's queer, that's all. Folk asking about roads after dark, asking after tracks, asking whether sheep have gone missing, asking whether the old stories hereabouts are only stories. If you are not worried, why are you telling me? I didn't say I wasn't worried. You said it was nothing. Well, things can be nothing and worrying both. That is Butterbur all over. The message was for Aunt Rowan, though he gave it to me without thinking. Everyone does now. Aunt Rowan still sits by the hearth some afternoons and scolds the stew into improving, but the Westgate has become mine in all the ways Bree counts. The taxman comes to me. The watch comes to me. Travellers ask for me, even the difficult ones, especially the difficult ones. Aunt Rowan says that is the final proof of ownership. Not keys, not papers, not signatures. Complaints. When folk believe you can fix what vexes them, she says, you are caught for good. I think she is pleased about this. I think she is also sorry. Both can be true. The roads feel wrong. I do not know how else to write it. The air has been damp for days, and the fields hold the smell of thawing earth. There should be birdsong in the hedges, mud at the thresholds, ordinary grumbling about roofs, boots, and late deliveries. Instead, Bree listens. Dogs bark at nothing. Horses startle near the west lane. 3 sheep from Mr. Bracken's fold broke their gate and ran themselves bloody against the ditch fence. No one knows why. Jorin has been gone more than he has been here. When he does come, he stands closer to the fire than usual but does not seem warmed by it. His eyes have that far road look again, the one I hate. The one that means he is mapping dangers no one else has seen yet. Tonight he came in near closing. No message, no wound, only silence. I poured tea. He did not touch it. That frightened me more than blood would have. "What have you seen?" I asked. He looked toward the common room, though no one was left there but Denny sweeping under the tables. "Tracks," he said. "What kind?" He shook his head, and that was not an answer, it was worse. "Wolf? No. Dog? No. Bear?" He looked at me then. I felt the cold move through the room. "Jorin. I don't know." He hates saying that. Jorin can bear danger, pain, hunger, cold, and being called a hero by fools who would not recognize him if he sat at their table. But he hates not knowing. He took the tea at last, though only to hold it. "There are strangers at the pony," I said, asking questions. "I know. Of course you know." He glanced at me, almost a smile. "Gone too soon." "They may know something," I said. "They may bring something." "That is not the same." "No." We sat with that. Aunt Rowan had gone to bed. The fire was low. Outside, the wind moved damply through the yard, carrying the smell of rain and sheep pens and the road beyond the gate. "Will you go?" I asked. "To the pony?" "To wherever the tracks lead." He did not answer. Which means yes. Anger rose in me so quickly I had to put both hands flat on the table. "I am tired of learning where you have been only by the mud you leave behind." He closed his eyes. "I know." "No, you know that I worry. That is not the same as understanding it." His hand moved across the table, slowly, carefully. He placed 2 fingers over mine, a touch barely there. But there. "I understand more than I did," he said. That softened me when I did not want to be softened. I turned my hand and caught his before he could retreat. He let me. For a few breaths we sat like that, hand in hand across the kitchen table, with the whole inn asleep above us and the roads waiting outside. Then something howled beyond the west fields. Not near, not far enough. Jorin's hand tightened once, and then he let go. I did not ask him to stay. I wanted to, but I am the keeper of the west gate, and he is Jorin Farrow, and some doors cannot be barred simply because the heart wants them shut. "Come back," I said. He stood. "I will try." I hated that answer. I loved him for not lying. One Wreathy, year of the black tracks, age 22. Jorin found something awful on the road tonight. A sheep. Torn. Apart. I am writing the words plainly because if I make them softer, they will become less true. And less true things are dangerous. It was one of Mr. Bracken's from the lower fold beyond the west lane. The poor creature had been dragged nearly to the ditch, but not eaten. Not properly. Not like wolves take a kill. Jorin said there were marks in the mud where something heavy had stood over it. Tracks too large for wolves, too deep, too wrong. He brought the news straight to me. Not to the watch first, not to Butterbur, not to some loud man in the common room who would turn fear into a speech. To me. He came through the back door with mud on his cloak and something terrible in his face. I knew before he spoke that the road had shown him something he could not carry alone. There were still guests in the common room, a farmer and his wife from Staddle, 2 merchants from the South Road, old Mr. Tunnelly pretending not to sleep, Denny polishing cups that were already clean. I took one look at Jorin and sent Denny to bolt the yard gate. "What is it?" I asked. He told me, not all at once. Jorin never spends words wastefully, even when they are needed. But he told me enough. The sheep, the tracks, the torn earth, the smell, the silence afterward. I felt the inn around me then, the warm room, the tables, the fire, the people who trusted these walls because I had promised, without ever saying so, that the Westgate was safe. But no inn is safe if the road itself has gone bad. "There are strangers at the Prancing Pony," I said. His eyes flicked up. "They've been asking after danger." "I know." Then they need to hear this. He hesitated. Of course he did. Jorin can walk alone toward Howls in the dark, but ask him to step into a crowded room and speak plainly before strangers, and he looks as if I have asked him to stand before a dragon. Maribel? No, I said. Not this time. We warn them. He looked toward the door, then back at me, at my face, at the keys at my belt, at the inn behind me. He nodded. Aunt Rowan was at the foot of the stairs when I took my cloak from its peg. She should have been asleep. She is never asleep when trouble enters by the back door. Pony? She asked. Yes. She looked at Jorin, then at me. Take the lantern with the good glass, she said. That was all. But as I passed her, she caught my sleeve. Her fingers were thin, but her grip was still iron. Stand where you mean to stand, she said softly. I nodded. I think she meant more than the road. I think I did too. We walked close, almost shoulder to shoulder. The street smelled of wet earth and lantern oil. Bree was not asleep, not fully. Bree never is. There were candles in upper windows, a horse shifting in a stable, voices behind shutters, the distant sound of someone laughing too loudly and stopping too soon. Jorin kept glancing at me, as if checking that I was truly beside him, as if I might vanish between one step and the next. I am still here, I said. He looked away. I know. You keep checking. I know. At one point he muttered, I'd rather be back at your inn. My inn? He glanced at me again. There was a softness there, buried under fear and road mud. It is yours, he said. The words warmed me in a way the lantern could not. Then the wind shifted, carrying a far-off smell of wet wool and something sour beneath it, and the warmth vanished. I stepped closer. You won't be facing this alone, I said. I'm right here. He looked at me like I had said something forbidden. Not impossible. Forbidden. As if part of him wanted to believe it so badly that belief itself was dangerous. We arrived outside the Prancing Pony. Light spilled from the windows, gold and noisy. Inside, folk were laughing, drinking, arguing, calling for more ale, dragging chairs over floorboards, living as if the world had not just changed shape in a muddy field beyond Bree. I touched Jorin's arm before we went in. Only his arm. I wanted to hold his hand. But Bree watches everything. And Bree remembers. His gaze dropped to my fingers on his sleeve. For one moment I thought he might cover my hand with his. He did not. Instead he breathed in, once, slow and steady. Then we went inside. The pony was warm and bright and far too loud. Jorin stiffened under the noise. I saw it happen. His shoulders set, his jaw tightened, and his eyes began their old work. Door, window, hearth, stairs, corners, men with knives, men with cups, men pretending one is not like the other. Butterbur nearly knocked him over with a tray. Bless me. Maribel, Jorin, didn't see you there. Well, I did see you, but not before I nearly... Are you here for someone? Or supper? Kitchen might still... Not supper, I said. That stopped him. Mostly. His eyes went from my face to Jorin's and back again. Oh, he said. Oh dear. We walked deeper into the room, speaking low. It's not wolves, Jorin said in a concerned and lower register. Too big? I questioned. Too wrong. Folk overheard. Of course they did. Words like those have teeth. I saw travellers straighten in their seats. A pipe lowered. A cup paused halfway to a mouth. Someone near the hearth stopped laughing. The strangers were at a table not far from the wall, the ones Butterbur had spoken of. Road-worn, watchful, asking after danger, old paths, and things Bree folk prefer to leave buried in weather and habit. We approached their table. My heart was beating hard, but my voice did not shake. That matters. An innkeeper may be afraid, but she must not spill it on the floor for everyone to slip in. Pardon us, I said. We hear you're asking after trouble. The strangers looked up. Jorin stepped forward. I saw what it cost him. Not the walking, not the danger, the being seen. His voice when it came was steady, grave. If you're looking for it? He paused. The whole room seemed to lean toward him. It's just found Bree. And that is where this entry must end, because something is beginning, for Bree, for Jorin, and perhaps for us. Whatever comes next, I will stand beside him. He is not Willow Jack to me. He is not a tale for frightened men to embroider by firelight. He is not a shadow in the fog, or a name whispered beside the road. He is Jorin Farrow, the boy who once stood in Aunt Rowan's doorway with mud on his boots and silence in his mouth. The man who brings me the truth when it is too heavy to carry alone. And I think I love him.